These figures are no laughing matter. In fact, it is advised that for every one reported case of HIV, one must assume there are 5 others that are infected. This illness affects every facet of society, including the much talked about issue of productivity. For this reason and more, the Ministries of Health and Labour joined forces to create a national workplace policy on HIV and AIDS. This policy has been set up to guide the overall response of HIV and AIDS in the workplace, emphasizing the importance of protecting and promoting human rights, including the participation of people living with HIV and AIDS on the job. Most of all, the policy speaks to the issue of stigma and discrimination against the infected and affected.
So this policy addresses any stigma or discrimination, make sure that it does not go unchecked, that there are guidelines to be followed.
Would you think that it's right to refuse to sit in the same room or sit on the same chair that another individual has sat on or occupied because that person is suffering from AIDS?
HIV is only transmitted through 3 body fluids, and it means you have to come in contact with these body fluids. It's blood, breast milk, and sexual fluids.
The policy requires the participation and cooperation of many partners: employers, trade unions, employees, and government. The document specifically outlines what is required of each group. For example, employers are mandated to provide reasonable accommodation for workers living with HIV and AIDS, as well as create and implement an employee assistance program. So how do the employers feel about these stipulations?
We know while these programs can have positive impacts on the infected and the affected, there is a cost that will be attached to that. So employers need to look carefully at their finances to see how they can fund these programs.
While it's widely known that stigma and discrimination is not just hurtful but anti-progressive, there are a few experts that believe things have shifted over the years in that area.
The stigma is very great out there. Whether in the workplace or in the schools, we've had teachers reporting children who known to be infected, or parents and so on, don't want the children to be with them and so on. So it's a big challenge sometimes.
It's slow, but you can see a transformation happening in the hearts and minds of persons. One example alone would be Regional Testing Day, which was last month. The turnout we had in St. George's was just remarkable.
There is a group of young people bringing the message of sexual and reproductive health, including HIV/AIDS awareness, to disadvantaged groups.
Another part of this is discrimination. It's a big one. Anybody know what it means to discriminate? It's a big one.
It's called the Affirming Who I Am project, and according to the facilitators, the messages were well received.
So giving them information about who they are and letting them learn about some of the things that we talked about, like self-esteem and HIV and AIDS and sex and puberty, it really helped, to kind of make them see that they're important and they're just like everybody else.
A lot of people believe that these persons don't experience life like we experience life. They have feelings and they experience all of the things that we experience, and they should be given the opportunity to learn about their bodies, just like the average person would.
The National Workplace Policy on HIV and AIDS speaks to sanctions for persons, workers, and employers who discriminate against a fellow employee who is infected or affected. Whereas Section 26 of the Labor Code clearly outlines their punishment, the policy also makes room for individual workplaces to create their own punishments as well.
A person who contravenes this section commits an offense and shall be liable on summary conviction to a fine not exceeding $10,000. So that already exists for discrimination.
The policy also speaks to a worker's right to not disclose their status. Some see this as a ticklish stipulation, saying, what about another worker's right to knowing how to adequately protect themselves? But Grenada's official Kizzy Abraham cleared the air on this matter.
My HIV status should not be a factor For example, if you go to any healthcare facility, there are protocols in place to deal with persons. So I would imagine in any work setting, occupational health needs to be considered. How are we going to ensure that everyone's health is protected?
Overall, persons believe government's move to create this national workplace policy on HIV and AIDS is a step in the right direction.
It's good that they have this policy in place, because the truth and the fact, somebody may be infected, but even if they are, they can still work. The way in which the virus is spread, we keep insisting, is not through casual conduct.
We're comforted in knowing that the ILO Code of Conduct with regards to the HIV and AIDS in the workplace has been utilized in this process. So we know that we're working along with international standards.
But of course, we know legislation can only go that far. It really takes the hearts and minds of persons in the private sector to take this on and implement it, and to ensure that it is monitored, ensure that persons who have grievances can use the policy to find peace of mind. So it is a step in the right direction.
For State of Affairs, I am Abigail McIntyre.